Ranky,
Yes.
Kammerer,
Yes.
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Daney.
Yes.
That motion carries. We good? Which brings us this evening to our treasurer's report. Mr. Treasurer?
Thank you. In tonight's packet is a treasurer's report for November. It's the 7th month of our fiscal year. Also included is our motor fuel tax report. For the month of October of this year, we had $91,053. That was down slightly, $436 from the prior year, but we're on pace with last year. Also included is a sales tax report, $208,760 collected in November for the month of September. That's up $2,555 from the same month prior year, or just 1.2%. That's it for the November Treasurer's Report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Anybody have any questions for Todd?
Sure. On the golf fund detail, it looks like the golf program is up on the income side.
Yes, as we talked about in our 6-month review, the golf was doing well. The food and beverage was also up from the prior year. It's getting through the winter months that sometimes struggle, but yeah, they are doing well for now.
Great work.
They have an excellent committee chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. That brings us to our President's Report this evening. We have a presentation for our National Night Out Award. I believe I will turn it over to Chief or Deputy Chief Pretkalis. Do you know which one will be leading the charge here? Oh, Sergeant Rybaski. Okay, he's taking over the reins. Okay, all right.
Good evening. It's always exciting when we can continue to put Bartlett on the map. In our category, we took 2nd place out of 48 cities in the country. This achievement was definitely a community effort. What is great about National Night Out is it allows us to continue to foster invaluable partnerships with residents, businesses, organizations in the community. The Bartlett Police Department would like to thank the Village Board, trustees, and Mayor Wallace for the continued support and generosity in order to put this successful event that impacts our community on such an elite level. Looking back, Mayor, we had a great time attending those block parties together and talking with our residents. Trustee Hopkins, we especially had fun at your block party with the hayride and playing Jenga. And by the way, for all of you, those that don't know, Mayor Wallace is a Jenga champion, and you want him on your team. Trustee Daney, we appreciate your help at the golf event, coaching during the National Night Out Golf event. Although it was evident some of us officers need a little bit more coaching from you. Trustee Kammerer, Carbonaro, and Ranky, we appreciate your support at the Picnic in the Park event, where there were over 5,000 people that attended this year. Wow. A heartfelt thank you to you, Trustee Grabenia, for your support with the blood drive, and for dedicating the event to your mother, honorary Trustee T.L. Ahrens. In her honor, we reached over 50 donors, which is an all-time record for that event. So we're humbled on how she can still impact and make a difference in our community. We'd also like to thank Village Administrator Paula Schumacher and Assistant Administrator Scott Skoricki for his continued support and giving us freedom to bring new ideas each year. It would not be complete without a special thanks to the Bartlett Park District, Bartlett Fire Protection District, Bartlett Hills Golf Club, the Lions Club, the Bartlett Rotary Club, and all our vendors who made this event possible and unlike any other event or any other town around us. Last but not least, I would like to thank our crime prevention team, Officers Vicki Anderson, Officer Maria Flores, and Officer Tracy Denninger. They truly work tirelessly all year round to make sure each family has an amazing experience at NNO. It is their hard work and dedication that continues to carry on this tradition in which we all see the community come together in solidarity. These officers are the masterminds behind the scenes, and they truly represent the Bartlett way. Believe it or not, this was our 24th National Night Out event for Bartlett. So you know what that means this year?
20,
Got
silver.
it, the big 2-5. National Out will kick off August 3rd and end on August 7th with picnic in the park. And we hope to all see you there. So without further ado, we'd like to present the second place plaque to
Can we take pictures here?
You.
I didn't know what he meant by Officer Marie. I always knew by Mimi.
Good job, guys.
Do you
Congratulations.
want us back here, or do you want us to go in front? Let's stand, let's squeeze in here. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. I think that way we get like,
Throw it on, yeah, okay.
is that gonna be too hard? All right, way to go, police. On our 21st or 5th, we don't expect anything but gold, Sergeant Rybaski, so. How many silvers did you get, Sergeant, or Deputy Chief Pitcalis? I thought you had mostly gold. That's right. That's right. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. That concludes the President's report this evening. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Hearing none, we'll move on to Town Hall. If anybody would like to address the board, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and try and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, Steve Henriksen. I'm at 1623 Fairfax Lane in Bartlett. I'd like to talk about the Jacaranda preliminary zoning. I hope I can do this in 3 minutes. So I attended the December zoning meeting with concerns about the proposed zoning for the area around Hawk Hollow School. Not against U46 selling and developing the land, but I have major concerns about traffic flow at pickup and drop-off. It is now, as it is now, with only one way in and out of the school via Jacaranda Drive, pickup and traffic can extend almost to Gerber Road as parents wait to pick up their children. Extending Winston through to Penny Lane would then give 3 routes for cars to enter the school, which I'm afraid would cause chaos. At the very least, someone would need to be outside directing the traffic in and out of the school parking lot. A couple of crossing guards would also need to be stationed outside of the school where we have no need for at present. I also read an article at the start of the school season about the police department reviewing the number of crossing guards they employ, and I thought they were looking to reduce them due to cost. Parking is also a huge issue currently at Hawk Hollow. Our larger events, though infrequent, could overwhelm the streets around the school. There would also need to be signage to limit parking on Jacaranda and the new street, which I consider Winston. At the zoning meeting, I heard there was no plan to widen Jacaranda. I believe in order to properly pull off development of the area, the extended Winston would need to be widened to a 3-lane road to accommodate both two-way traffic as well as a lane for parking, much like Centennial has. Those spaces could be used for parent loop traffic at drop-off and pickup, as well as parking for our larger events. I would also ask that a one-way only route between the hours of pickup and drop-off be considered to help limit the congestion by preventing left-hand turns into the parking lot, much like Prairie View does upon exiting their parking lot. I would request that the street parking be limited to the residences during drop-off and pickup. No parking on the streets during those times. Cars on the street make it hard for the drivers to see the little pedestrians. At the December zoning meeting, I also learned of a plan to extend Fair Oaks north. I ask that any consideration of extending Fair Oaks north to be canceled. It would create a messy intersection at Jacaranda and Gerber Road. It would run right next to the playground, which those of us in the PTH are trying to raise $35,000 to renovate. I also have concerns about the traffic patterns on both Winston and Hawk Hollow would impact the area in general. Currently, there is no reason for traffic on Penny Lane unless you live there. With the extension of the Winston traffic, this could increase as people on Gatewood or Hawk Hollow Drive to the north find it easier to go south via the new Winston Road. This could increase traffic at both ends of Penny Lane. The same could hold for those who live on Penny coming to Gatewood via Winston. Overall, those who walk to and from school currently have little traffic around Penny or the Winston roads. I would ask the village to vote no on this current proposal and meet again to perform a traffic study to review the impact these traffic issues could create, while also voting to cancel any proposed extension of Fair Oaks Road northward or approving the vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Henriksen.
Good evening. Rob Carney, 29W 470 Sunset Ridge Drive in Bartlett. Also a former zoning member here in Bartlett. I know that, I'm also talking about the Arcadia preliminary plan and final subdivision rezoning. Typically, when a developer comes in, I know they have to provide open space for parks and playgrounds and whatnot, but I know that Schrader Park is located right there.
Hold on just 1 second.
That Schrader
That's not your
Park-
timer.
That Schrader Park is located there, so I would assume that they don't have to provide any open space. However, like Stephen mentioned, I'm also the chairman for our playground committee. We are currently raising about $35,000 to replace very poor equipment that is injuring children and whatnot. So I was going to reach out to the developer and see if this is something we can maybe ask for a monetary donation in our efforts to provide a new park for the proposed 15 new families that we would welcome to Hawk Hollow Elementary School. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here.
Evening. My name is Justin Klein. My wife Allison and I and our 4 kids live on 245 Hawk Hollow in Bartlett. I'm also here to discuss our opposition to the development, the Jacaranda development, for several reasons, several of which were mentioned already. Number one, Winston Lane, which is currently a dead end, is a path that our kids and many others use to get to school safely. Sort of extending that into a street, I think, would raise some safety issues for kids and their folks walking to school. Also mentioned, and I'll bring it up again, is the issue with the current status of Jacaranda, which is during drop-off and pickup at Hawk Hollow is extraordinarily congested. Parking at school events is already limited. And then finally, number 3, we live on Hawk Hollow, our backyard, now currently a beautiful field, which is surrounded by a forest preserve and wetlands. I think that the further development of that area would really be aesthetically displeasing. You know, my kids and a lot of kids in the neighborhood currently use that field, as do many Bartlett football teams, soccer teams, and so on for practices. So for those reasons, we strongly oppose the development of that property. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Good evening. My name is John Elenardo with Frederick Quinn Company, the construction manager for the construction of the new police station. Real quickly, Happy New Year. We weren't here at the end of December. Thank you for giving us a pass. Construction continues. We continue to make good progress on the inside of the building. It's a little more difficult to see our progress because it is largely on the inside of the building, but we have a roof installed, and so the inside of the building is dried in. We're in the process of putting in all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, metal stud partitions, and interior build out of the building, and we continue to make good progress. We still are on schedule to turn the building, or the first portion of the project, over to the police department in early May, with the completion of the entire project before the end of 2018. Be happy to answer any questions you might have with regards to progress.
How soon are the vending machines going to be available?
The vending machines? I don't know about that. Thanks, good night.
Thanks for the update. Would anyone else like to address the board at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to our standing committee reports this evening. First standing committee report is Planning and Zoning Committee, Chairman Hopkins.
Thank you, President Wallace. We have one item on our agenda, the Jacaranda subdivision, and just based on some of the things that the residents have said, I'd like to make a motion to move this back to committee for further review. I don't know.
I would second that.
I'm not for that, but, so,
Do we open it up to comments in regard to the
Pardon me,
motion?
Chris?
let's move it back to committee.
I know, but there's not a second, right?
There is a second.
There's a second.
So, I mean, you can do that, and these residents have raised concerns. I will just give you a little background that was in the memo to the staff when this came to the board in December, is that this piece was part of a settlement agreement of a lawsuit when it was a nursery, and the subdivision and the lot layout were approved by a consent decree that the village entered. Now, that was before the school was carved out. So the school then bought the school site, which is in the center, basically, and the site plan was approved for that. But the lots on the remaining property are locked in and covered by that consent decree. They actually had approval of the subdivision by the village board. It's just that they didn't build it within the time frame for the PUD. So our ordinance has, for the special use for a PUD, a time frame within which to bring a final plat, and then a time frame within which to build once the final plat or PUD plan is approved, for a number of reasons, mostly dealing with the restrictions on the school district as to how they sell their property. They have to go through a public auction process. They had issues with the developer who didn't perform and basically defaulted on that contract. The market at that, subsequent to that changed, and they let it sit for a few years and have come back. There were some issues relative to the wetlands that have all been resolved. The county's signed off on both the wetlands and the wetland mitigation. That was something over the years that took some time. There was a special use for how they were going to handle those wetlands. And again, they satisfied the county on that. What you have before you is essentially that same PUD plan that was approved as part of the consent decree, subsequently approved when the school site was carved out of it, and is back to you in essentially the same form. There's very little difference between that and what was already approved. Now, I know there's been concern about the road right-of-way that was dedicated. That was something that was part of the original plan, the original consent decree, and some of the surrounding subdivisions as well. So it is simply a dedication of right-of-way. The village at this point, and I think that was the result of a traffic study done by a prior village engineer, Dale Marting, who felt that there needed to be a north-south road, and there was some reluctance on the board's part as to whether that indeed was necessary. But each of the developers who came along in that area was required to dedicate their land in the hopes that as they assemble, eventually we would acquire all the land as properties developed and have it so that at some point in the future it could be built. Currently there's nothing in the budget to build that road. And at some point in time, if you're not going to ever use it for a road, you can vacate a dedication. When you vacate road and right-of-way that's dedicated, it basically goes half to the owner on one side of the right-of-way and half to the owner on the other side of the right-of-way, and becomes owned by that party, if you decide to do that. But there's nothing in this plan with the dedication that mandates that it be a road. The board would ultimately have to approve of financing to build that road. There's still pieces of that road that haven't been acquired. So the idea was, over time, as different pieces came in and developed, that with this public need, at that point, it was thought that it was a need. I don't know that there is that kind of traffic and need to move traffic north-south. But by approving this plan, it does not lock in the road. Some of the roads that get built as part of this subdivision that don't exist yet to serve that development would provide some additional ingress and egress from the school site that would help some of the traffic issues that are being talked about. Now, some of the neighbors probably don't want that road to, connect up and bring any kind of traffic through their neighborhood, but that was always contemplated. And this is a plan that's been approved for years and years, including the court settlement agreement. Now, that being said, the board has the ability to postpone it and look at it at committee, but the facts, as I've just stated, don't change. And you have those same issues whether you deal with them tonight or in the future.
So we got a motion and a second. Do we need to have a vote on that?
Yep.
That's the table. Or send it back to committee.
Motion to send to committee. So there's a motion to send it to committee, and that was seconded. Then we should have a roll call on that.
So,
Does anybody have any questions before we vote?
I had a hard time hearing the second or the.
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm clear on this. There's a motion to table this, is that correct?
No.
No, just send it back to committee.
It was to send it to committee.
To send it to committee.
Any board member has the ability to send it to committee, frankly, without a second and a roll call on that under our own rules. So if you want to stand by that motion, it could be.
Yeah, I want to have a motion, and I want it to be, there to be a consensus.
Okay, so you do want the second, a roll call on the motion to send it to committee?
If someone else wants to do that, that's their prerogative, but
Okay.
I don't know what's going to really change. I mean, it's already been to the plan commission, it's been approved.
I just think there could be some modifications, maybe a separate drop-off and pickup lane, maybe some signage on the road. I think there's some tweaks that could be made to this plan before we approve it.
this is a question, but the drop-off area that we're discussing by the school, it would be on U46 property. I don't know if we have any say-so about that, do we?
If they want to approve the subdivision,
Okay, what does U46 have to do with the subdivision?
While the school site is within the overall property, the site plan for the school was approved. So really, the layout of this, internally of the school and how they move traffic is not really part of this. One could make an argument either way on that point. But if there's easy, cheap fix that may satisfy everyone, maybe that.
In 2001, when it was approved, had Hawk Hollow Drive been built?
Yeah, Hawk Hollow had been built when they approved it.
Yeah.
That was part of the plan. This whole subdivision has been planned out for quite some time. It just got put on hold for quite some time. And if you want to send it back to committee, you're going to have to do it on your own, because I'm not calling a roll to send it back to committee.
Well,
He's asking for a second.
You got a second?
And any board member has the ability by themselves to send it to committees. And he's asking that there be a second and a roll call just to see if there's a consensus to that.
if there's not, then I'll make the motion and we'll vote on this.
All right. Just moved by trustee Hopkins to move this issue, or this subdivision discussion back to committee, seconded by trustee Gabrenya. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Gabrenya?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Rinky?
No.
Camera?
No.
Carbonaro?
No.
Daney?
No.
And motion is fails.
Then I will make the motion. I motion to approve ordinance 2017-04,
04?
an ordinance approving of the preliminary and final PUD plan, final plat of subdivision, rezoning from an SR2 PUD zoning district to a P1 zoning district, lot 16 and 22, granting a special use permit for a planned unit development, and extension of time to commence construction of the Jacaranda PUD and subdivision.
Second.
It's moved by trustee Hopkins, seconded by trustee Daney. Is there any discussion? Jim, can you give us some highlights on the history of this? Because I think some of the board members, I've looked at it for quite a while, but
Brian summarized it, but essentially...
it doesn't mean that just because the history was there, it doesn't mean we have to agree with all of it.
Years ago, when the rest of the subdivisions around it developed to the east and to the north, we had a developer named Mr. Brown who wanted to turn his nursery into a subdivision. At that time, it was a 43-lot subdivision, and I don't think I have a plan showing the plan of it, but essentially the school site that you see on this drawing, and I don't have my pointer, were all lotted and subdivided. The village went into a lot of deliberation on this. There was wetland issues, there was some soil remediation, a lot of other things that came into play, and things didn't go well, and it ended up going to court, and as a result of the court decree, the village, approved this subdivision back before 2001. I mean, it was probably in the late, it was in the 90s, late 80s. Well, subsequently, the school district always wanted to have an elementary school site in this quadrant of the community. The property was sitting there, and the then school district finance officer, Gordon Schultz, called me up and said, hey, you think they'd sell us this site? The developer, wanting to get some remedy from his lawsuit and kind of get out from under it, sold this to the school district for Hawk Hollow Elementary School. With the sale of it, as Brian said as part of the consent decree, the lots that are surrounding the school site remained. The road pattern remained, the lots remained, and the school district, and I attended the auctions, actually sold it to a developer, probably 20-some years ago. That developer never built it. There was some issues with the wetland, as Brian stated. Subsequently, the school district went through their whole wetland mitigation. They went through the 3-year period of maintaining the wetlands to the satisfaction of the county. That was said and done. They're kind of up in the northeast corner.
And the school district was doing all of that in the intention of building this exact subdivision?
Yes, as you see it. And obviously maintaining the school site. And then probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, Roberta and I sat down with Greg, his school attorney, and their finance people and said, the school district would like to sell this property again, take another run at it. What do we have to do? So we outlined how to go through the process to get it final platted, get the PUD extension. We've gone through it. It's not been just like an overnight thing. We've met several times on it with their attorneys and with their engineers, and lo and behold, this layout and the process that they have to go through to prepare it to sell to a developer and auction it off again is kind of at the cusp. So you're voting on this preliminary final PUD plan, the extension of the time frame, And that's approved, it will allow U46 to go and auction this off. This, on the side, I get a lot of calls, we've gotten a lot of calls, Brian's gotten a lot of calls about developers, builders that want to get and jump right on it. The developer to the south, they're interested in it. There's all these different home builders. So it's a prime spot. It's an infill project. We believe that it will sell fast. We actually are kind of counting on the lots being readied and built later on this year.
What would you estimate that U46 spent in preparing this property to sell to a building developer?
Well, they put in the infrastructure, so you're talking several $100,000.
Several $100,000,
Easy.
yeah.
And the wetland mitigation, never an easy task. It kind of carried on back and forth, so that had a big price tag to it. So I don't have the exact numbers, but a typical development of this size is easily getting up to the $750,000 infrastructure.
Any other questions?
Has the petitioner observed pickup and drop-off at this location for that school? Do you find any safety issues or any things that could be problematic?
According to the zoning meeting,
I asked the petitioner. Thank you.
I'm sorry, this is Greg Berna, School District Architect.
Thank you.
We have a very similar layout on some other schools. There is a plan for the driveway to extend out onto the weston, which is onto the east there, and not the current configuration due to the road not being built. So we hope that the flow will be much better.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. Can you explain that again?
If you look on the drawing there, the kind of the L-shaped road there, that's where the exiting will be for the drive. They'll actually relocate the drive as part of the agreement for the sale. The current drive out of that parking lot on the east side is kind of a temporary for the road not being constructed.
It just dead ends, right?
Can you go to the colored zoning location map picture and explain that again?
Sure.
I can try to, let me see if I have
So
that
if you
pointer.
look on this drawing here, or this photograph, if you see the east side there where there's a drive going north or up on the page, that is actually a temporary drive that goes back onto Gerber. There's actually a spot closer to the building that actually will go out onto the road.
So they will,
New road.
so parents will then be able to make a one-way in and out
Yeah.
from Gerber back to Gerber?
No, they'll come out onto what would be probably, yeah, right in there.
This Winston that's on our picture.
Right. Ties into Penny, I believe it is. Right there. And you can actually see the drive is started there on the district property.
So as a U46 architect, I would ask you from 2001 until 2018 now, the trend for less actual walking children and more being driven children, it would seem to me that a traffic study would be different today than it would be 17 years ago because more parents drive their children than children walk by themselves. Is that what you feel as an architect? Is that something that is addressed, the difference of 17 years in the trend in how children get to school?
The trend that I've seen throughout the parking lots is kind of separating the buses from the cars, which this was one of the main ideas with this layout at the time. So
And there
it
is
is
no,
really kind of meeting the trend that you want to try and separate it. We've extended, with working with the enclave to the south, we've extended the sidewalk along the bus drop-off, so we have more room for bus drop-off, which is all along that west parking lot. And then we'll have a better, which is kind of the longer kidney-shaped parking lot right there. Yep. So having this as a dead end is kind of problematic.
Yeah. I've been in and out of there. It's not easy.
So the next question I have is that since I've lived next to Centennial School for a very long time, before they put in that little inlet for the school buses to stand to pick up the children, if you left at 8:15, you almost got out of your driveway because the cars were backed up all the way back there. Then once you got out in the street, it took you half an hour to get around the school buses that were parked on the street. So my question is, if you have that temporary drive, is there room for both cars to get, buses and cars to get in and out, or are we going to be at a standstill?
Oh, I'm sorry, the temporary drive is what's currently there.
Right now.
So that is actually on the car lot, and there is plenty of curb drop-off within the property for the buses. They are not on the street, dropping off,
Okay,
like Centennial.
thank you.
Will the developer be responsible for extending these roads?
Yes, that will be, it's subject to their auctioning of it, but the developer will be responsible for finishing the remaining infrastructure, which will be the road primarily. There's probably some sewer and water extensions too.
If that's the case, then I didn't understand then Brian's comment earlier that we can give back the space to the residents. Are we talking about two different things?
Talking about if that road ever gets vacated?
One of the things that happens with this development is that this Fair Oaks Road dedication, this location on this property gets dedicated. Fair Oaks Road, as Brian stated, it's on our village thoroughfare plan, and the village engineer, a long time ago, Fair Oaks Road as it comes up from Army Trail, let me see if I can pull it on this air photo. Fair Oaks Road comes up from here, hits Army Trail, and you can see the right-of-way that we obtained from this property owner through this subdivision, the enclave, caught the corner of the school lot. This residential developer, this residential property still has not come into development, but the right-of-way kind of cuts right through here and goes up, and it actually hits the Hawk Hollow subdivision. They dedicated it, but this segment will be dedicated with this. If the village in the future does not want to extend Fair Oaks, because it also goes all the way up and crosses over the proposed right-of-way, crosses through the subdivision that's north of Schick Road, goes over the railroad tracks and connects up with Struckman and that system and bring it back to, it goes back to Struckman, Mayflower, and that area. That was the plan, to have another alternate north-south route. Obviously, things got in the way, and development never, we didn't get everything development, so what is not dedicated is this area here. But if you were to choose as a village, and our thoroughfare plan is a fluid document, when we update the land use plan, which we'll bring later, we're going to propose that thoroughfare plan. If you decide to take it out of the thoroughfare plan, or at least this segment, any of that right-of-way that's been dedicated, the village board can vacate the right-of-way, and then the sections of the right-of-way that adjoining property owners have, they each get half of that old right-of-way. So you can eliminate that if you decide to do that. That's what Brian was alluding to.
I'm not
That's why there's so many.
recommending that.
So many.
Just for, in the far future, if it becomes necessary, you've acquired it.
That's
If
what-
you never build it, it doesn't hurt anything to be dedicated. But, you know,
If you
who
go-
knows what the demand will be. It's very difficult. You don't want to have to pay for it to acquire this land if that was the foresight, and that's a good way to lay it out. But we're a long ways off from that in terms of funding it and filling in the missing pieces. So
If you go across Schick on Gerber, it dead ends where the road should have kept going. There's a lot of roads in
Yes.
Bartlett like that.
And it dead ends into that property that we've known as the White Farm.
Yeah.
That corner of the White Farm, there's a little triangle that the Forest Preserve years ago gave us an easement for this road right-of-way to go across and then go to the railroad tracks. That's still in place.
Has this school outgrown its capacity?
I'm going to defer to Greg on that.
No?
It's not at capacity right now.
But it's not at capacity? Okay.
Most of the grade schools last year were under capacity. Any other discussion?
Just wanted to ask one thing before we move along. There's been a lot of discussion about the safety issue with dropping children off in the roads and whatnot. Can we just briefly go over that one more time? Because I know we spent some time talking about it earlier. Just very briefly.
On the school site?
Right.
I'm going to defer to Greg on how that works.
And then just bear in mind, we'll get a crack at this when the developer actually comes in front of the board. We'll get a big crack at this when he comes in and says, this is what we're going to do, and this is the final plan, and this is who's buying it, and, yeah.
We do?
Yeah, this is, we'll get another discussion.
Did we change our ordinance to allow?
This is the ordinance
This is
change.
preliminary final plan for
Yeah.
this site.
For the site, yeah.
We won't see it.
When the developer comes in, we'll be able to discuss some of the things with
We
it.
can't talk about the widening roads and
No.
and sidewalks at that point in time.
Oh, yeah.
But there won't be the developer won't be coming in.
It'll be
All
coming
the
to
developer-
46, that's right.
All they'll have to do is do our final plat checklist, which typically does not come to the board for approval. It'll be providing, the engineered plans, the security for all the infrastructure, and then getting the plat recorded. And Greg, have you got the plat recorded? You're not there yet. You're going to get this before they get the plat.
If you want to run through the
Yeah.
safety issue that we had, I think that would be something good for the residents that are here.
I think Jim can talk to the roads themselves and with the sidewalks and on both sides, I believe, and tying in with the existing roads. There is currently a path from the north coming down, which will be replaced by a sidewalk going to the school. There's sidewalks on both sides of that road, also coming from the subdivision on the east that will have sidewalks to the school as well. They have a good flow for the buses being separated. They drop off on the passenger side, so they pull right up to the sidewalk closest to the school and drop them off in a single line. And that is the parking lot on the west side, or the kidney shape, the longer kidney shape, right there. And then the parking lot that's more directly right in front of the front door is for the parent car drop-off, and that's separated with a median in between the two separate lots, right there. And that will flow, you can enter it from the north, which is already there, but it will flow to the west, or to the east, excuse me.
So in your opinion, this is an improvement of what's currently existing out there?
Right, because it really wasn't completely developed. It was stopped at the intersection of Gerber there.
Those buses now turn around at the end of that one way? Is that how they get out of there?
Yeah, they just come right on through and right out. There's two entrances there. Or an entrance and an exit, I should say.
So they're trying to leave as the parents are coming into that same entrance?
No, they come in a different entrance for the car area.
Okay.
So what is
And one of-
unusual here is a lot of times we have all the engineering plans as we're bringing it to you. Here, they've engineered and built the school site to a point, knowing that they would have to complete the road system, and you're seeing where those roads will be. The developer will have to put up the letters of credit and will bid on this project, and they'll have to put up a public improvement completion agreement to build the roads, put in the sewers, in the roads that aren't there yet, the sidewalks, et cetera. But they're not doing things on the school site itself. Now, to the extent the sidewalks get extended in help in that process, they're within the right-of-ways where you see them, as opposed to internally on the school site. But Greg has described, Mr. Burnham has described how that would tie together, and it would be an improvement over the current layout. But it is a little unusual because they've got to go through this bidding process, and we're saying, it's subject to us approving of your final engineering. So if there's a tweak within the right-of-way for a lane in the right-of-way for the road, that can be accommodated, but it's not really getting into the internal configuration of their parking lot or their site, the school site itself. It's going to be improved because it'll tie into a road system that completes a loop, so you have better overall circulation that they couldn't have when things dead ended and they built the school site first. So.
One of the questions one of our residents had was in regard to crossing guards, and that had been a good point that we had talked about in the chief's, back in August probably, that's a possible way to save, but that's not something that we've implemented or have intention of implementing in the coming school year or beyond, correct?
In my proposed budget for 18-19, the crossing guards remain in the budget.
They'll have to build that.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Hopkins?
No.
Rinky?
No.
Cammer?
No.
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Daney?
Yes.
Cabrera?
No.
Motion fails.
Wait, it's 3-3.
Is it 3-3?
4-2.
3-3.
4-2.
Oh, 4-3.
4-2.
Wait, you didn't vote.
No, it didn't have to, it was 4-2.
4-2, okay.
Can I make a motion to bring this agenda item back to committee?
Yes, I think we should do a motion to reconsider. That doesn't mean you're approving it, but just so that we don't run into the time frame of when it has to come back. And you were on the presiding side, so it would be a motion to reconsider and send to committee. And that way, we can, otherwise you're going to run into a time frame.
So what's the purpose of going back to committee now? So that the petitioner can amend the site plan?
I don't know. Trustee Hopkins wants to send it to committee. I think he's thinking, which was his initial motion, is there may be a way to lay out something differently that would satisfy some of these safety concerns. And maybe that revised plan would be acceptable. That I don't know. But I think, well, that's up to the board. So it failed. So I think to just fail and move it to committee, it doesn't do anything. I think it would have to be a motion to reconsider, either separately or combined with a motion to send it to committee. Otherwise, you have a time frame within which you could reconsider, and they'd have to start over after that with public hearings and all. And I don't know that, I don't know the reason for people's no votes in terms of how far off they think it is from being accepted.
I think if we have a motion to reconsider and people do some homework on the way that configuration is now and how long that plan has been into place, do some research before our next board meeting, I would consider we bring it back to the board and have another vote on this.
Well, I think you're going to want to see a plan so that you know what that is, and I don't know that that's doable by the time you'd have to get it in the board packet for the next meeting. So I'm not suggesting you delay it any extended period of time, but I think realistically, for the school district to try and draw up what some people may be looking for, you may want to allow that time. And I'm not, I'm talking about, no more than maybe 2 meetings, but I don't know that it's realistic to bring it back by the next meeting.
I don't want to get too bogged down in procedure, but if memory serves, the motion to reconsider has to be made at the next regular board meeting.
Or this meeting.
Or this meeting.
Right, so that's what I'm suggesting, is you move to reconsider, not to vote no. So you move to reconsider and then move to table. Or send it to committee. Otherwise, you're right, then you'd have to bring it by the next meeting to reconsider the vote and vote on the same ordinance. I think we're talking about potentially a minor change.
I'm going to make a motion to send the Jacaranda subdivision back to committee.
So you understand what that means? They're going to have to make changes on this. It's going to have to go back into a lot of paperwork and...
Well, right now, it's better than what they have right now. They have a no vote right now.
Do we have a second?
He has a point, okay? The point is that, right now, they have nothing at all. So if the only option we have is send it back to committee, I'll second that motion, because I really don't have much of an objection with this plan, and I'm trusting what the petitioner had told this committee, this commission this evening, that what they'll offer will be better than what they currently have out there now. So if the only option we have is to go back to committee, I don't want this project to die. I want to move forward with it. So I'll second his motion.
All right. Moved by Trustee Hopkins, seconded by Trustee Gabrenya to move this topic back to committee for some review. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Ranky?
No.
Camera?
Yes.
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Daney?
Yes.
Gabrenya?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Motion carries.
For our staff's
Yeah. You just opened
interest,
up a huge...
we're going to be working with the school district. You're looking for something that's going to exhibits and some design work that shows how the school bus traffic, school pedestrian traffic, and school car traffic will flow better through the site once it's potentially developed in the manner that they're showing up here. So so we can work with them and get some ideas to them on what you would like to see.
I would like my question addressed, that there's a difference in how kids are taken to school from 18 years ago, 17 years ago. I really think I'm committed to that idea, and I would like to see numbers that illustrate how that trend has changed.
Okay.
I will say, under Robert's Rules of Order, it would be cleanest if we come back by the next meeting with a plan, and then you reconsider the vote and you see a plan that you like. You can reconsider sending it to committee, and you can also reconsider the vote, because there is a little bit of a procedural trick bag here that I believe they may have to start over, and I think if we can avoid that, that would be advantageous to everybody.
And I apologize, I interrupted you.
Plans as we need to reconsider.
In terms of staff, I'd also like to see a more productive use for Fair Oaks. The current platting, the plan 20 years ago, was never reasonable. That's not feasible. You're not going to connect 2 roads at that strange of an angle. So if we're talking about at this point, I mean, it's not going to happen. At this point, if we're talking about vacating the dedication, well, why not make, use of that road now? Let's have it dedicated for park purposes or something. Makes absolutely no sense. And then I'd also like to know from a police perspective, what are we gonna do with signage? What are we doing with speed limits? How are we gonna handle the traffic volume? How are we gonna handle the fact that every one of these new residents are gonna be trying to get out of their house when the buses and the cars are trying to come in? So I think I'd like to hear more about that as well.
Okay.
They can't. There's not much you can do.
All right, is that all? Thank you, Chairman Hopkins. Next item on our standing committee report this evening is the Building Committee. Chairman Cabrera.
My item was covered under consent.
Thank you, Chairman Cabrera. Next item on our standing committee reports is Finance and Golf Committee. Chairman Daney.
Mr. President, we have nothing on the agenda this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Daney. Next item is License and Ordinance Committee. Chairman Camera.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, we have the Village of Bartlett Strategic Plan. And with that, I could turn it over to staff and let us, maybe give us a recap on things, but I don't know how much detail we want to get into to kind of go back over our strategic plan.
Make a motion, and then we'll have a discussion. And then
All right. I move to approve the Village of Bartlett's strategic plan.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Camera, seconded by Trustee Ranky. Is there any discussion?
One of the things as I read through our strategic plan and our whole idea of communicating more with the residents of the community, it occurred to me, what would be the chances of us actually, I know we must get it through the website to the residents in some way, but have we ever published this in like a local paper for the residents to get, or anything of that nature? Would it be too lengthy? I don't know. I'm just looking for ways to educate the public about what we're actually doing so that they can see that, hey, we've got a plan, we're trying to do things.
I don't think we've put it in the paper historically, but we make copies. We have copies at the Bartlett Library. I think we've had copies at other taxing bodies. We have copies down in our lobby. We'll put it on our website. We'll put it on our Facebook. And anybody who wants a copy, we'll do that. Maybe a highlight in the Bart letter to talk about the work you've done and staff's done. Maybe a highlight in the Bart letter that goes to everybody. That might be something to get it out.
I just think it's important that people know that we're just not, setting up here twiddling our thumbs, that we've got plans, that we're trying to look to the future and try to do some good for the community. But if we don't educate people about what the board's doing, they just always assume the worst.
We'll publicize it quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would think we'd be able to take snippets or paraphrase part of it and tweet it and Facebook it in
anything
a digestible way. And
right.
That in itself is in the strategic plan, so we'll make sure that we do that, absolutely.
One of the things that's in the strategic plan is to have public information on our Lake Michigan water connection. How soon do you think we can start telling residents about this? What kind of plan do you guys foresee? Have you guys talked about
We've put together a communications committee regarding that transition. Dan and his team has met with some administration and communications. We have a web page that's devoted to the transition. And as we get more information on there, we'll push the web page out quite a bit more.
what's the webpage going to be?
I'm sorry?
What's the webpage going to be?
It's going to be dedicated to information about the transition of Lake Michigan.
Right, but what's the address? What's the name going to be?
It's going to be a layer within our own website.
Oh, okay, so it's not going to be like
Be a link.
bartlettwater.com or
We can
something?
look into devising an ancillary webpage as opposed to being as opposed to being a button within our own website. We can look into that if that's what the board wants.
Maybe that would be a little bit more visible and easier for people to hit.
Find and hit, yeah.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Kammerer?
Yes.
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Daney?
Yes.
Cabrera?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all we have tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Kammer. Next item on our standing committee reports this evening is Police and Health Committee, Chairman Carbonaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing to report this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Carbonaro. Next item on our standing committee reports is Public Works Committee, Chairman Ranky.
Thank you, Mr. President. No items tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Ranky. Is there any new business?
A couple of residents have reached out to me regarding our chicken and bee ordinance. So I was wondering if we could put this on committee to discuss the chickens and the bees again, and maybe amend that ordinance a little bit.
I'm not interested in talking about it for a while until it's been here for about a year. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, we worked so hard to get what we got and to bring it in. I know there's people that would like to have the zoning changed and some of the lots smaller and everything else, but I think we need to give it some time to at least see the logistics work out, see if there's complaints, see if there's any issues, see if it's working. I'd have to say, even though I understand, because I was a big promoter of it, of making it open to anybody who wanted to do it, I just think now that we have it, let's just run with what we have and see what's going to happen.
I think one of the big things is there's someone that misses it by like 20 square feet, and they can't have chickens. And part of the ordinance is they can't go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and get that appealed, the way that Mr. Mraz has mentioned to me. So I think it's just very minor changes that I think could be implemented that would help some residents out.
Does that stop it there, though? I mean, one person says, well, you know, I'm only 20 square feet off, and then somebody else comes back and says, well, I was 22, and you did it for 20, so, you know, why can't you do it for 22? Because we don't know. I mean, right now, you have one instance of one person, and I get it, but, you know, part of me agrees with you, but part of me just says, let's just let it ride, make it work. I know these people would like to have chickens. I'm all in favor of it. I would be happy to let everybody have them. But like I told one of my students who missed having an A by 0.02 of a point, there's a point where you got to have a delineation. You got to have a stop, and you just can't say, well, you were so close, I'm just going to give you that A anyway. There's a point.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and I think opening it up to all single-family lots is something that I think we should do. Not multifamily homes,
right?
But all single-family lots. And as long as your backyard meets the requirements for the chickens in the coop that we have set forth, then you should be allowed to have them.
And I don't know that I disagree with that after we've gone through a preliminary time where we can say, okay, we set this before the village as a trial, as an initiative, to see if it would work, to see if there were any complaints, to see how people liked it, to see how many people did it. And after that, if we have no complaints, people are extremely happy, it's no issues, and then I see no reason not to do what you're saying. But I agree with the mayor. We just started this. We just got it approved. Let's just let it ride for a little while.
Anybody else have any comments about that? I feel strongly about just watching this issue for a year, so I've voiced my opinion. I don't know if anybody else has any.
I think we had last year, and we had no complaints, to my knowledge, correct?
I just happen to have we've issued 4 chicken licenses. All the lots were over the 8,000 square foot. They met the requirements of the size of the coop and the outdoor height. There hasn't been any complaints, you know, about chickens clucking too loud or making too much noise or smelling. And the first license was issued on April 3rd of last year, and the last one was issued in June. So we're just shy of a year for the first license. And we've got 4, and then there was the one that had the smaller lot size that we denied.
I'd like to see how these chickens weather the winter before I talk about this anymore.
One of our zoning board members, as you know, is a chicken keeper, and she said that they're hardy, and that they kind of huddle together, and as long as they put the wind.
Talking about me?
Yeah, no, the wind is the big problem, and they make sure they have water, and they use some insulation or tarps to block the wind, and the chickens survive. Because it's cold out there.
Well, I agree. I think we maybe wait a little while. I do think it makes sense to permit people to seek a variance. I know there's a person that, you know, that's 20 square feet short. There's a lady in my neighborhood that's just a hair short. You know, I mean, if we give a variance for fence height, we ought to at least give them a shot to do that, but
Why don't we make
see
it-
how the whole thing's working.
I want to make a commitment to look at that in March or April.
So June would,
That's the biggest issue is the lot size.
so technically June would be a year then, Jim?
April would.
The first license issued, it'd be April. The last one was issued in June, so it's April of this year.
So do we want to revisit this in April?
I think sooner the better, because I know when people buy chickens, if we did discuss it and make changes to it, people, they want to get on it. So I think that's
Second meeting in
why,
March, maybe, we'll bring it up. Scott, you want to make a note that maybe first or second meeting in March, first meeting in March, we'll bring it up as new business again, maybe, and then see if we can throw it on the committee, second meeting in March. Anything else? Any other questions for staff?
I want to thank Public Works for the snow plowing. I know it started snowing on Sunday night, and today when I woke up, it was still kind of snowing. So thanks for all the people that are out there plowing and away from their families, and I think they did a great job. So thanks.
Good. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We'll be moving directly into the committee of the whole meeting. Second. Moved by trustee Cameron, seconded by trustee Carbonaro. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Cameron,
Yes.
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Daney,
Yes.
Gabrenia,
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Ranky.
Yes.